I did my best to keep everything organised when I was disassembling the Charade. I've got a box for each door area of the car, so hopefully I'm going to find all the parts in there as it comes back together again.
Because I'm in a bit of a hurry to get Chewie back together and out of the shed, I'm not spending a lot of time reconditioning the parts that are going back onto the car at this stage, but they're all small things that could be revisited at a later stage and with a bit more time. I plan to keep this little Charade long term, so I don't mind having little projects to do on it down the road. There are also little things like window rubbers that have shrunk or aged over time, and I'd like to look for new replacement ones of these or better second-hand ones. The best way to figure out what I need is to get everything back together again. I don't want to hold up the project further while waiting to source parts. I'm using Q20 Super Multipurpose Lubricant supplied by efox.ie, which should keep them moving freely. I actually watched back some of my own videos to see the order of reassembly here. It's important to fit the door handles first because the latch mechanism will actually obscure some of the nuts on these. That's the one that'd be really awkward with the locking mechanism in place. That's more of the Q20 lubricant. Someone pointed out before that I was using penetrating oil for nearly everything, so I'm trying to correct my ways. Penetrating oil to free things up, and lubricant to keep things moving. I was a bit worried about reassembling these complicated little mechanisms, but they're quite robust on the Charade, and the access is quite good. The kind of level of security that crept in later in the 90s to stop car thieves hadn't quite gotten into these cars. Interesting that the door handles are made the same for both sides of the car. There's an empty leverage point on this one here. You'd be able to swap them from one side to the other, which could be a handy thing if they get a bit worn over time.
I think it actually feels less complicated when everything is clean. I was a little bit worried about all this, but it's going to get back together really well.
Moving forward, it's exactly the same approach to the driver's door handle first. I had left any bolts or screws attached to the parts that I had taken off, so it was easy to find them all. If the threads weren't on the part, I just used masking tape to tape them to each thing. The front doors are pretty much the same as the back, although you've got the addition of the key lock. And they're just held in by a large spring clip. I took a few moments to figure out which of these lever bars goes in which direction and tried to keep them orientated in the right way, respective to each other. I really didn't want to break these little plastic retaining clips, as I'd hate to be trying to find replacements. They were actually harder to get off than to put back on again. They're designed for assembly, I suppose, in the factory. That's why I wanted to make sure I had all the bars in the right orientation before I locked these into place, as I didn't want to be taking them off again, weakening the plastic. That's the latch post that the mechanism grabs onto. I'm removing the masking tape from the light switch activated by the door, and there's a little rubber cover that goes over that, so I'm using Q60 silicone spray on that. It'll lubricate the studs so they pop in nice and easily, and it'll also preserve the rubber in the future. That's all functioning nicely. I did the same jobs on the passenger side and then moved to the boot, where I started by fitting one of the gas struts so I wouldn't have to balance it on my head the whole time. It was a bit of a head twist to figure out which of these was for the left and which was for the right, as the bracket could potentially have gone on either way around or left to right. Without glass, one strut is actually enough to hold the boot up. There's actually no fixed bar between the latch mechanism and the key lock, just a striker plate where they interact. The key lock is held in by a similar clip to the front doors. Already with the lock mechanism in place, the weight was coming back into the boot and it was ready to have the second strut added. The last thing to do in fitting the door locks was to test the boot. So I removed this bit of masking tape from the latch post and dropped the hatch.
That's great. That's all my door locks on the car now. Next thing is to get a bit of glass on.